For more on this, I'm joined by Chris Beck, president of Clements Worldwide, which is an international insurance group focused with expatriates and international organizations. I guess it's a long way of saying you're talking about risk, essentially, here.
Absolutely.
Look, these no-fly zones and the unrest and the war, I mean, this is, first of all, a terrible topic to be discussing. It's one I wish we didn't have to talk about, but in the reality of the world that we live in, we have to talk about it. Companies have to deal with it. Airlines have to fly through it. What do you tell airlines?
Well, it's not just focused on airlines, Phil. If we take a step back and think about what is going on and what the exposures are and what the risk is, it's everybody that an airline serves, all of the ancillary services, the companies, the individuals that are attempting to continue their work or to continue their lives as these conflict zones are in the headlines. What we tell them is that they need to be planning well in advance, and they need to have contingency plans in place to address this risk as it occurs, and most importantly, what they're going to do to protect those assets in these eventualities.
Okay, so let me give you a real world scenario here. I'm watching the news, and there are airlines, for example, like Delta, who say that we're not going to fly there because it's too dangerous. Then you have other airlines, for example, British Airways, who say it's okay to fly there. What do they base it on?
Well, they're working with governmental organizations, and they're also working with their own in-house staff to evaluate what the risk is. And what we advise our clients and the clients that are using these services is they need to be making those independent evaluations as well. They need to be looking at what an airline may be saying about getting into a location, what they're finding on the ground with their existing assets that may be deployed in a location, and making those determinations based on what they're trying to achieve and what the importance of that objective is.
So, okay, so let's go now. I'm leading you into this other discussion about Flight 17 on Malaysian Airlines, because a lot of people said they shouldn't have flown that at all. They shouldn't have even been above Ukraine because of the conflict there, but they said, well, look, other airlines are flying through here. Why couldn't we? I mean, and now this incident has happened. A lot of people are saying that, well, the pilot maybe should have been warned. Maybe a pilot should have known. Maybe they could have deviated. There's always ifs.
Right.
It's a big gray area.
It certainly is, and we don't have all the facts, so it's very difficult to make any kind of an observation about what specifically happened with MH17. The reality is that airlines are transiting over conflict zones to one degree or another on a daily basis, and the importance is how they're managing that risk and how they're evaluating that, and whether or not they're getting good information from the expert partners that they're working with.
Do you think the passengers, I mean, you know, as a passenger, if I'm getting on board a flight and they're going to fly over a conflicted area, I may or may not know what the route is to the plane. I buy a ticket and I just think I'm going to go from point A to B. Do you think the passengers should know that, hey, by the way, Chris, we're going to fly over a conflicted area. We're just letting you know in case you want to back out today?
Well, I don't know how that would actually function.
But you see where I'm going with this.
I absolutely do, and what I can tell you, Phil, is that I'm headed off to the Middle East in the next several weeks, and that will undoubtedly take me on a route that covers some form of a conflict zone, whether or not we're aware of it as passengers. I do think that we have to have some faith that the governmental and the private sector organizations are evaluating these risks to the best of their ability.
All right. Now, let me take a break from airlines, because you consult, obviously, with a wide range of people. What about just manufacturers, normal businesses, consultants, people like yourself, people who have to fly back and forth because that's part of their job? They are involved in the same type of risk as any other traveler or innocent traveler would be as well. What do these companies do? I mean, they have to, you can't tell your employer, no, I don't want to go on this business trip because I'm worried about something happening.
Well, and that's absolutely right, is that organizations that we work with and that we've been talking to have been planning for their ability to manage this risk, whether it's in conflict zones in sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, as we've seen in parts of Eastern Europe, and that's been ongoing for decades. So it's absolutely critical that organizations are planning in advance for how they will manage that, mitigate that risk, what they'll do with deployed assets in the event that there is an occurrence, and how they take care of those individuals, those employees, their most valuable asset.
I'm going to ask you a question that perhaps touches home a little bit more. As I'm watching TV, I see people going through the carnage of the aircraft, and a lot of these are journalists. Then they're talking about people shooting, and there's firing, and there's all these things going on. cameramen, journalists, media organizations who are in these dangerous areas, how much training do you really need? I mean, how do you prepare yourself for something like this?
Well, it's difficult to prepare to be in a conflict zone if you're not in a military capacity. But the reality is you can work with outside sources, you can work with experts to help you understand what you're going to be facing.
People forget what a dangerous situation it is. I mean, you're just a regular person caught up in a very difficult situation. Chris Beck, president of the international insurance group, Clements Worldwide, thank you very much for helping us.
Thank you, Phil.